Famous investor Cathie Wood is holding true to her $1 million Bitcoin prediction, and this would mean that Bitcoin would need to do a near 44x over the next 7 years to hit her $1 million Bitcoin prediction by the year 2030. So today, I want to discuss her thoughts, her rationale, and the statistics that are driving this wild Bitcoin prediction, and I want to see if it's actually possible for Bitcoin to hit this mark. So if that sounds interesting at all, make sure you stick around for the entire length of this video, as there will be important information discussed the entire way through. So without further ado, let's talk about all of the leading market factors, what's happening on this Bitcoin chart, and anything else that could be affected by the current news that we're seeing in crypto. We're seeing a lot of chop. There's a lot of news that's coming out, especially in the traditional markets this week, with the possible Fed rate hikes, along with a lot of earnings as well. But let's start with Miss Cathie Wood. Now, if you're not familiar with Miss Cathie Wood, she is a very large player. She runs a massive hedge fund called ARK Investments. And with this, she is holding true to this idea of a $1 million Bitcoin in the next 7 years. But what are some of these statistics that she believes will make this possible? Well, let's look at a couple of these key metrics that I guess is kind of the basis for ARK's belief in a $1 million Bitcoin. So if we're looking at Bitcoin's metrics from the past performance of 2017, 18, and 2020, compared to where we were at as of fall and winter last year, we need to look at a couple of things. We're going to be looking at market cap basis, we're going to be looking at the price, hash rate, supply, and we'll go through this as we are seeing it. But we also need to understand how Bitcoin has performed against traditional asset classes. So we're going to be looking at that as well. So when we look at the market cap of Bitcoin in 2017, 18, and 20, we can see that Bitcoin has significantly increased in market cap, especially over the last 5 or so years. So in 2017, we saw Bitcoin had a market cap of $58.2 billion. In 2018, it was up to 85, and in 2020, it was up to 126. Fast forward to fall of 2022, in the heart of this bear market that we are in, we're not measuring the top of crypto's bull market. We are literally measuring the bottom of our most recent bear market. And even after all of that, crypto was still at a $393 billion market cap. Now, when we're looking at the cost basis, or the real price of Bitcoin, it wasn't at 3,000, it wasn't at 4,000, it wasn't at 6,000. This time around, it's at 20,000. So the top of some of Bitcoin's previous market cycles look like it's the bottom of where Bitcoin is currently priced at. Another great metric here is hash rate. I believe we talked about this in one of our previous videos, but hash rate just hit a new all-time high. Why is that important? Because miners are still very active in the background. Bitcoin is still very secure. And if hash rate is increasing, then there's still very clearly a lot of interest in not only Bitcoin itself and using it, but also in still mining it and supporting the network. So Bitcoin's hash rate has increased from a 12.6 to a 44 to 127 in 2020, and it has nearly doubled since then, all the way up to 262.4. So all of these metrics across the board for Bitcoin are drastically increasing, especially year over year. We look at the supply of Bitcoin that has been moved in the last year, and even it has increased. Less people are interested in selling Bitcoin, and that's something that we have seen really like for a while now. That's really not even a new metric. And so when we look at Bitcoin's addresses with a non-zero balance, essentially saying, looking at all the Bitcoin addresses out there, how many of them have Bitcoin actually in them? How many of them actually have a zero balance, or above a zero balance, excuse me. This number has drastically increased. In fact, it has almost doubled in size from 24 to a near 44%. Long-term holder supplies increased from 51.9 to 71.8, and even the Lightning Network capacity, something that was pretty much non-existent in 2017, barely was around in 2018, has increased from around 340 all the way up to 4,700. So these numbers, again, across the board, drastically increasing year over year. Now, another important thing to understand is looking at the Sega rate, the compound annual growth rate. If you're not familiar with what a Sagar is. So in this report, it says on a 5-year Sagar basis, Bitcoin is up an average of 272%, while global equities are up by 6.1%. Global debt provided a yield of 1.4%, and gold is up 2.2%. So when you compare it to most other mainstream asset classes, there is a black and white night and day difference. In fact, if there was a way to make this a more extreme analogy, I wish I could. Because right now, the growth differential between traditional assets and Bitcoin is seriously like comparing a puddle to an ocean. Again, we're looking at a 272% average versus a 6.1% on the traditional high end. So when we look at all these things, whether it's a 3-year, a 4-year, or a 5-year, and we look at the averages for all these different numbers, Bitcoin just night and day performance difference. Global equities average was 10.6, global debt was 1.5, gold was 2.4, Bitcoin was 152. You look at the 4-year, Bitcoin outperforms everything by over 10x. And even if you look at the 5-year, Bitcoin is outperforming everything by around a 20x. So there's really just no, it's hard to even make a comparison at this point when something is outperforming a lot of these other assets by several times what they are able to do, especially when we're looking at some of these longer term stuff. So, maybe in the short term, yeah, Bitcoin has volatility, but in the long term, we're talking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even 10 years out, Bitcoin has been performing all of these assets. And so what Cathie Wood is saying is that I am confident that since Bitcoin has been able to outperform in the last 3, 4, 5, even 10 plus years since its inception, I believe that that history is our friend, history will repeat itself, and that if the past has told us anything, it's that there's the numbers don't lie here. And so she's essentially saying, I'm putting my faith in the numbers. Bitcoin's past performance is something that I believe in. And if these numbers are going to continue even at a fraction of a percent, so maybe instead of doing 10 or 20x what global equities, debt, or even gold was doing, she's saying even if it does a fraction of that 10 or 20x that we're seeing as an average, maybe it does 5, maybe it does 2 or 3, even then, I'm still happy with that. So that seems to be a lot of the basis behind this. And so do we think that Bitcoin can do a 44x by the year 2030? Because that would put it much more in line with the market cap of some of these larger asset classes. Is it possible? I would say it's very much possible. But if we're looking at this if we're looking at this growth rate over the 5-year period of around 272%, well, that's not quite a 44x. So if we follow the compound annual growth rate and we're looking at this, that's not going to quite get us to a 44x. But it certainly will mean that there's great gains to make in Bitcoin. Maybe it means that it'll be a 10x. Maybe it means it'll be a 15x. I think it might be a little much to say that Bitcoin will do a 44x in 7 years. Again, I'm not saying that it's not possible. However, again, I like to look at the numbers. I like to look at the statistics, and if we're looking at our compound annual growth rates and Bitcoin's past performances over the past couple of years and using that information to realistically help us determine what Bitcoin could be in the future, I think that those numbers show that, yeah, Bitcoin could easily do a 2, a 3, a 5, even a 10x in the next 7 years. Do I think that Bitcoin will do a 44x? I don't think that the numbers and these statistics tell us that. I think that that is a little bit bold. It's a little bit bullish. It's completely possible, but I think that it's faring more on the side of being optimistic. And that's perfectly okay, but you have to understand that it's not nearly as realistic as maybe saying that Bitcoin can do a 10x. So that's the kind of the wheelhouse that I want to discuss, because they see major players like this talking about Bitcoin being able to do a significant increase from where it's currently priced at. While I think it's possible, again, if we're using this information to justify why we believe in something, we also have to use that exact information to justify the amount of percent or the amount of times that we believe that something can increase in price because we can't just draw a double standard here, if that makes sense. So using the same information, I don't think it's possible, or I don't want to say I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's likely that Bitcoin will do a 44x. It's possible, but unlikely given the past performances that we've seen out of Bitcoin. I think that it will continue to outperform most of these different asset classes that we have looked at. I think that a lot of its metrics are going to continue to increase. Just maybe a 44x is a little bit too bullish, but even side projects, things that were modeled after Bitcoin, like Litecoin, has been performing really, really well lately. We'll look at the Litecoin chart here in just a second, but even Litecoin is, I mean, it's really outperforming a lot of the other altcoins. This is something that a lot of people counted down. They counted it out. They didn't really kind of care about it anymore because they saw it as this older cryptocurrency, this older altcoin project that they just kind of brushed off to the side. They just didn't think it was nearly advanced enough to keep up with everything. But if we go over here and we look at the Litecoin chart, it has actually been performing extremely well. In fact, if we measure this from its low down here to where it's currently priced at, in the last 233 days, Litecoin is up 134% from its low of last year. Now, let it be known that Litecoin bottomed out at its low in June of last year. We're talking last summer. Most cryptocurrency projects have just recently hit new lows. We're talking within the past couple of months. With Litecoin, it's a different story. Litecoin hit lows around 7-8 months ago. So props to Litecoin for being such a performer in this zone. And I mean, look at the chart. I mean, how many other charts can you say that just hit a new multi-month high in the last, the last time that Litecoin was priced at this point, I mean, that's actually a new yearly high for Litecoin, because the last time it was at this level was back in May of 2022. So Litecoin is making big moves, and it is continuing to stand out over here. So let's go ahead and move into our final topic, which is Aptos. This might even be something for its own entirely separate video. Maybe we'll go in depth on this in Friday's video, but there is a big push right now. I don't know if all of you have noticed it, but there's a big push right now to get blockchain and cryptocurrency and Web3 studies into major universities. And most recently, Aptos Labs has issued a grant to a blockchain lab at Cornell University for $50,000. So this grant is going to be used to fund research in developing an approach to scale the performance of blockchains, building a secure decentralized log on top of Byzantine-tolerant databases. A Byzantine-tolerant database mitigates the risk of thinly distributed networks of nodes, which can result in the network being attacked, like a 51% attack. Now, if you remember earlier, we actually had, I believe, who was it? We had Cardano. They were mentioned in here. So Aptos is following Cardano, which funded a $4.5 million research hub at Edinburgh University over in November. So this continued push to get crypto, to get blockchain studies into academia, it's happening. We're seeing it happen behind the scenes. We just covered another article on this very topic. I think it was like a week or two ago. So there's been a major push. I hope everyone's noticing this. And I certainly hope that we're going to see more traditional studies of blockchain. I hope that we can see it be a little bit more of a traditional degree pattern where we can see it be used as a degree completion plan. I want to see kind of it be its own macro study, if that makes sense. I think it's needed. I think there is enough studies around there for it. There's certainly enough information at this point, and I want to see it continue to get pushed. So this is just something that I was personally excited about. Hopefully everyone else is as excited as I am. But I think we're going to wrap up the video there. So let me know your guys' thoughts on all of this. Do you think that Bitcoin can realistically hit $1 million? I think it's possible. Again, this is going to sound bad. I am very bullish on Bitcoin. I'm not sure it'll hit $1 million by 2030. I think that might be a little bit much, but I certainly think that Bitcoin can easily do 10x plus by the year 2030. But a 44x, it's going to be a hard one for Bitcoin. But let me know your guys' thoughts. Everyone in the comments section could easily be against me, and that's perfectly okay. That's one of the great things about this, is that it encourages debate and discussion. So I'm curious to know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. So let me know there. And again, everyone, thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you in Friday's video.